All right, today is Tuesday, June 16th, around 4:30 p.m. I'm still on East Coast time because I'm still stuck in New Jersey. Hopefully that ends this week. I should get a job pretty soon. In honor of the World Cup, because I've kind of paid attention to it, not really, but a little bit. Once in a while, I'll watch some highlights. Like I just watched Egypt against someone, Bolivia, Iran against New Zealand. The only game I watched was the U.S. because I was interested in that one. In honor of that, and because today's talk is going to be about my album Going Tribal, I'm going to talk about a book I read a couple of years ago, which I would say it's probably my favorite book. It's either this or The Idiot, Dostoevsky. This is Bill Buford, Among the Thugs, and he's a journalist. He's done other stuff that I don't really know too much about him. I don't know where he's from. He's American, though. I know he's from America because that's a part of his book here. Bill Buford, let's give him some credit because he wrote an amazing book. It's a book about football, soccer. Bill Buford, he was born October 6, 1954 in Louisiana, Baton Rouge. Went to Berkeley and University of Cambridge, a little bit of background there. And I believe he's most well known as a journalist or an author, either one or both. American author and journalist. There you go. He's got a couple other books if you want to check it out. This one is the only one I read from him. Read it in 2020, around that period when I was reading a lot of stuff. And it stayed with me, man. It's not just about Green Street Hooligans, which that movie, if you ever saw it, was kind of based on his experiences in real life. In the late 80s, I think 89 or 90, he went to England and he's like, he wasn't undercover. He's saying, I'm a journalist. He wanted to learn about hooliganism, football hooliganism in England, because it's an absolute, amazing story. It's a sad thing as well because people actually die, people get paralyzed in fights. All throughout this book, there's some crazy stories, man, where the media seems to pick out Philadelphia a lot because I listened to a lot of sports radio as a kid growing up. I'm in South Jersey, so Philadelphia, basically southern New Jersey is a part of Philadelphia, northern New Jersey and central. Maybe central is kind of mixed, but it's more New York territory. If you're from South Jersey, most likely you're an Eagles fan, you're a Phillies fan, Flyers, Sixers, Union, whatever the hell else. Soul, is that still a thing? Arena football? Like Mike Trout, famous baseball players from Millville, New Jersey, not too far from where I am. And he's a big Eagles fan. He goes to a lot of Eagles games. A lot of people like that. So southern New Jersey is like another suburb of Philly, pretty much. The Sixers actually practice, I think, in Camden, right across the river, Delaware River. And why was I bringing this up? Because the media likes to poke the bear known as Philadelphia sports fans. They poke the bear because supposedly people threw batteries at some dude, JD Drew maybe. And there was other fights that happened at the Veterans Stadium before they got new stadiums in Philly and became all more corporate sponsored stuff. It's kind of interesting when I read this book, there were so many parallels between the 80s, 90s, and today's culture where everything's corporate, everything's on camera. You probably don't have as much hooliganism today because of those things and harsher penalties maybe, and the police have gotten smarter, rightfully so. You want to go see a football game with your family, you shouldn't be afraid of getting a beer bottle thrown at you or your kids getting cursed out, your wife getting spit on, or anything like that. Not to say I'm not spreading that type of propaganda about Philadelphia, I worked at the Citizens Bank Park for 10 years. I worked at the Link serving beer as a beer vendor, and I never saw really too many bad things in those games I worked. So it's a lot of media hype just to get like a clickbait type of thing. Philadelphia, they're very passionate people. This area, the East Coast, is more passionate, I think, than even maybe the southern states. A lot of southern states are more college football based, and they like that better because professional sports becomes political. Football in general, not just football, any professional sport, because it's corporate, it's commercial based, it becomes a political football every year or every few years. There's going to be a strike soon. I remember in school in the early 90s when they had a strike in baseball about something, I don't know, free agency, whatever it was back then, arbitration. I don't know, I was a kid, but someone did give a speech about that. I remember that, sitting in like seventh grade in this Catholic school, and somebody was giving a talk about why baseball players are on strike, because at that point in my life, that was a big deal, collecting baseball cards, watching the home run derby every year, and playing baseball even though I sucked. So sports is very political. Maybe that's why people like college sports, because it's a little bit less so. But there's a political angle to college too. It's just life, you know. Anything you do in life is good. It can become a political um, plague. That's what I'll call it. Because politics can be like a plague where you don't even want to deal with it, but it's in your face because somebody said so. In my experience, it kind of can equate to that type of a disease where you're just like, fuck this, I'm done with this politics, man. So that's kind of where this book led me when I read this yesterday and today. It's an easy read, very, very highly recommended. If you like hooliganism, you've seen Green Street Hooligans, that movie. If you like watching the Premier League, the World Cup going on right now, he tells a story about the '90 World Cup. I think it was England versus Holland, if I'm thinking of it correctly, and it was in Turin, Italy, or Sardinia. I forget now. Maybe there's two separate stories like that. But he's following the hooligans. He's like one of them. The groupthink and the tribalism was so powerful that Bill Buford, like he in the book, he's like he was considering himself almost like one of the English whatever firm he was with. I think it was Manchester United, and there's some crazy stories that I'm not going to try to repeat. Just go read the book, but I'm going to go through some of it right now. I thought it was a good thing to read. Maybe I'm trying to do more research now as I go through my talks because nobody wants to hear me whine about my own shit. I might as well talk about more interesting stuff that people might want to listen to. Bill Buford, Among the Thugs. It's a it's a very easy book to read, and if you're a sports fan of any sport, cricket, wrestling, doesn't have to be football or soccer, whatever you call it. Just go read this book. It's really good. It's on Amazon. I found it at a thrift store when I read it 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, I need to get it. So I got it on my Kindle as well because it's. I would read this again. This was the second time I read this book, and it was just as captivating. Like I was experiencing it for the first time. So this is a book I will read again. Um, I highlighted a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to go through it and see what it brings up in my conversation about tribalism. The album, again, I'm talking about today is Going Tribal, which is from over 10 years ago, probably longer. And if you want to think of Horace Tapscott, and I'll talk about him a little bit more, I talked about Marlene Ribeiro, Fela Kuti, who else? There's another type of artist I wanted to talk about. So let me find it now before I forget to. Definitely Horace Tapscott might be the biggest influence because I love his brand of jazz. and it really completely took control of my mind when I first found Horace Tapscott. Fela Kuti, of course, and the Harold Tapscott album I just found. It was some live album. I got it off of Bandcamp. I'll share it on my post to Substack. It had a song called Fella, and it had a song called Why Don't You Listen? And specifically the song, they're both good, but Why Don't You Listen was like one of the best songs I've ever heard. And it's a minimalist, but it's got just crazy drumming and tribal beats. When I say tribal beats, that's what I mean, like the dun, 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 like you're in some African village with the villagers is fucking going back to 1,000 years ago. Your most base human instincts of what dancing could be. Why do people dance? Why do people dance now? You want to let out all of your aggression through dance. Like people should look at it like that. Like it's not just some extravagant ballet. You need to get dressed up and go to a ballroom. That's not my style. But I like the intimacy almost and the aggression of that tribal mentality. The bump, 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 bump. And hip hop was all over that. Hip hop is based on that. It's all about those beats and how it evolved over time. But you could go look at blues, you could look at rock and roll. It's it's all good. Everything evolves together in a way. Hopefully more today than maybe 50 years ago when certain radio stations wouldn't even play black music or everything was segregated to such a stupid degree where today I don't think it's like that, and at least not in the regions I'm in. And I kind of, look down when people say cultural appropriation because a lot of times that's like my problem with identity politics where you're labeling someone by their skin and saying they can only make this kind of music. That's why imposter syndrome exists because people breathed it into existence because it's like a form of ignorance. I'm a white Italian heritage dude from New Jersey with a bald head and I don't know what my accent is like. Do I have a Jersey accent like I should be on The Sopranos? I don't think so. I have no allegiance to anything really. That's another reason I wrote this album, Going Tribal. Maybe I'm yearning to find a tribe, but at this point, fuck that. I want to be a part of every tribe that can give me some guidance or give me inspiration. That's more of it. I want to be inspired by every tribe. Russia, Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, Iran, America. I don't give a shit about your cultural blood feuds, whatever the fuck, your rivalries. That's for all those rich people to argue over. Everyone else is just stuck in the muck trying to survive. So I want to be inspired by everybody. Canadians, Mexicans, Bolivians. The cool thing about the World Cup is that you kind of see different cultures. Hopefully nothing bad happens. It's just all friendly, good sportsmanship stuff. It usually is nowadays. And it's cool North America is hosting all these events. It's a global event. It's pretty cool. And if USA can win, that would be one of the greatest memories of my life that I would hold dearly if the USA could win a World Cup before I died. I saw the Eagles win 2 Super Bowls. I still haven't seen Sixers or Flyers win a championship. I saw the Phillies. I was at that parade in 2008. So the World Cup would be another notch in the sports belt. Like I witnessed the USA beating England. That would be cool. What if it was USA versus England in this World Cup this year in July? The final will be USA versus England, the rematch from 1776. You can't write that. That would be the greatest thing ever. Like Rocky, the first Rocky with Apollo Creed and Rocky. That was the same thing. It was the bicentennial 1976, I think. That's why that movie worked so well. Uh, I'll mention my own Rocky script is Marathon. If you don't know Marathon, just go look it up on my Substack. It's a screenplay I wrote about a chain smoking marathon runner inspired by movies like Rocky. And I really thought that would be the best way to break my career. I was like, marathon, there's the Olympics coming to Los Angeles soon too. So in my story, the marathon runner is training for the 1984 Olympics in LA, and that actually did happen. I think LA has already hosted the Olympics twice before. So you can, if you've heard some of my other talks, you know I enjoy sports. I write about sports a good deal in my book. So it's another reason I love this book. Among the Thugs, I can't recommend it enough. Um, let me read the first thing I highlighted and see how this goes because this might take a while, but hopefully it's enjoyable and entertaining. This is from page 12 of Among the Thugs, and I'm not going to say the page numbers. I'll just say this is a quote because I have this on my phone on my Kindle. It might not be the exact page if you have the paperback copy, so I don't want to confuse people. I took the Metropolitan line to the nether regions of East London to watch West Ham, but I remember little about the visit except a sign that I saw on my way out. Remember Ibrox, please leave slowly. Ibrox is Ibrox Park in Glasgow. And so I went to Glasgow as well. It was there in 1971 that 66 people were asphyxiated in the crush trying to get out. I attended a match at the appropriately named Plough Lane, the wooden rickety ground of the Wimbledon football team, an architect's bad memory stewing in the stench of the enveloping pollution and muck. Like the dude's a great writer. I think I just really like his form of writing is so poetic. This is a couple pages later. This, it would seem, was neither natural nor logical. It was, I see now on reflection, not unlike alcohol or tobacco, disgusting at first, pleasurable with effort, addictive over time, and perhaps in the end, a little self-destroying. He's kind of talking about the rundown stadiums, which reminded me of Veterans Stadium in Philly, or some of the older stadiums that are still around. Um, Veterans Stadium had some funny stories like that. Rats in the bathroom, people peeing all over the place. He kind of compares this tribal mentality to the working class. I'm not going to talk shit. I consider myself a part of that too, even though I'm not working right now. I'm trying to get a job. He even mentions later in the book that in England, you're not supposed to even talk about the working class. It's kind of frowned upon to even talk about it unless you're in it. All right. So you have to remember he's an American journalist and he's trying to ingratiate himself into this firm of Manchester United fans that have bled for the team, literally, probably a lot of them broke bones over their allegiance to Manchester United, get tattoos. So you see an outsider trying to be a part of your tribe or even documenting your tribe, it could be, of course, you're going to hesitate. And there's parts of this book where the media are very frowned upon by different soccer hooligan tribes. They talk about the National Front and some of that stuff later. That's how deep this goes. It's a part of the culture in England, and they were well known for that. When he talks about when he took the trip to Italy, there was the military waiting for the English fans. They had to try to stop some people from going. People were dyeing their hair different colors, getting fake passports just to go support their English team in Italy because they couldn't even get on planes if they went as their real names. It's a crazy, very specific to England, I believe, but there's hooligans every other place too. There's plenty of bad stories about Italian fans or German fans. Maybe not as well known as the English history of hooliganism. He stared at me, then he said, All Americans are wankers, and paused. All journalists, he added, showing perhaps that his mind did not work along strictly nationalist lines, are cunts. All Americans are wankers. All journalists are cunts. Yeah, there's probably some points to that. Maybe more of the journalist thing, but I wanted to be a journalist too, so it's kind of weird. Being on the jib, Mick continued, with only a half pint now remaining in his glass, means never spending money. That's another thing. A lot of these people are like criminals, like actual thieves. It's just a crazy culture, man. You'll After you read this book, you'll never talk shit about like an Eagles fan for yelling at a Vikings fan. You guys are gonna lose. Oh, Philly fans are so rude. Or when the Minnesota Vikings fans came, they put their jersey on the Rocky statue, and people got all freaked out about it back in 2017 or 18. Sammy, Roy Downs, and Banana Bob were all leaders, or at least that's how Mick described them. And I had no idea that they were leaders. It it sounded like some kind of tribe. So again, yeah, his initial reaction to hooliganism was not what he expected it to be. There's leadership, lieutenants, and he goes into that later about the tribal mentality of hooligans. It's not just a bunch of drunk people that don't know each other. I think that's pretty well known, the word firm and how that, whether you like the Wrexham show, I think that's a part of that show. Another quote here. The package to Turin was interesting for another reason. As I knew, Manchester United supporters were banned from matches played in Europe. The ban, according to Mick, was because there was a riot every time the team played abroad. And yeah, as you go farther in this book, he gets very detailed about what it's like to be in a mob, in a crowd that's about to rip shit up. It's about to set off. It's about to go off, whatever their slang was. Breaking property first and then turning to injuring innocent people at times. A mob is a strange phenomenon. It is a gathering of heterogeneous elements, unknown to one another, except on some essential points such as nationality, religion, social class. But as soon as a spark of passion, having flashed out from one of these elements, electrifies the confused mass, there takes place a sort of sudden organization, a spontaneous generation. This incoherence becomes cohesion, this noise becomes a voice, and these thousands of men crowded together soon form but a single animal, a wild beast without a name, which marches to its goal with an irresistible finality. This is actually from a different writer, Gabriel Tarde, Tarde, The Penal Philosophy from 1912. But I can see why he used that quote. The animal mentality is crazy. In a crowd hungry for blood. The effect was immediate. These were no longer supporters of Manchester United. They were now defenders of the English nation. Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. Going into that Rule Britannia, like they do get into some things later. Like this book was way, way before Brexit, but you could see how the politics didn't really change from generation to the next. He had a whole chapter in this book about the National Front, keeping immigrants out of England. That the whole Brexit thing was about that. So it's not like that was just a sudden thing. Of course, it's been even with Thatcher and Reagan, you can connect it to the United States experience. Well, right now, like I think it's bad now, right, with all the ICE shit. So it's pretty striking to see how these things connect to today's culture. Things don't really change. Things change, but they don't really change. Talking about people sick of journalism at Trump rallies where they would supposedly attack reporters and give CNN the finger and do shit like that. It's always been kind of like that. And if you want to talk about mm, people who feel disenfranchised always have similar targets: immigrants, the media, and I don't know, maybe rich people. It depends on your philosophy of who to blame for your disenfranchisement. Right now, I just blame bullshit in general. I'm pretty balanced when it comes to who do I blame for not getting an opportunity in life. I don't blame immigrants. I don't blame the media. Those are things that are very scapegoated and in a dangerous way because people uh, will spread hatred like that. And I know this is a deeper conversation. I'm not trying to get into this because although my album is called Going Tribal and it's about tribalism, and I write about it in my book in a couple different chapters, I don't really want to go into deep political discussions about immigration. Another quote: Mr. Wick's alternative, the only one, was to declare his faith in the humanity of what came out of the airplane, even though such a declaration meant overlooking so many things, like Clayton or Mick or the Union Jack boxer shorts worn as a tribal headdress, or the expression of unequivocal terror on the 8 flight attendants' faces. Or the fact that by 11:30 in the morning, 257 liters of 80 proof spirits that had been purchased an hour and a half beforehand had already been consumed. Mr. Wicks in the story was kind of like their chaperone in a way. After all, who was giving a police escort? Prime ministers, presidents, the Pope, and English football supporters. Wherever they went, they seemed to have a police escort. More sometimes for their own protection, I guess. Sometimes because they just wanted to get them to the stadium and get them back to the airport if they were traveling abroad or back to their hotel because they knew shit was going to go off. And there's documentaries on YouTube as well. You can check out like real experiences. It does get pretty violent though, if you don't want to see that stuff. Once or twice, facing the spectacle of the square, the thought occurred to me that I should be appalled. If I had been British, I might have been. I might have felt the burden of that peculiar nationalist liability that assumes you are responsible for everyone from your own country. I was ashamed to be British or French or German or American, but I'm not British. Mick and his friends and I were not of the same kind, and although I might have felt that I should be appalled, the fact was I wasn't. I was fascinated, and I wasn't alone. Another page here. Why do you English behave like this? One Italian asked me, believing that I was of the same nationality. Is it something to do with being an island race? Is it because you don't feel European? He looked confused. He looked like he wanted to help. Is it because you lost the empire? Yeah, I don't know. I guess those are all possibilities. I think Brexit happened because exactly that. English people maybe don't feel connected to the European Union, some of the stupid regulations. I never really followed Brexit that closely to really know exactly what the deal was. But I think it is a lot to do with that. There is a national identity that's very strong, maybe because the British did own the seas for a long time, the British Empire, but you could say the same thing about Italy, the Roman Empire. Any empire is destined to lose its power over time. This is just a line I liked. In fact, the scene below us was starting to look like a satanic Mardi Gras. I just like the image of a satanic Mardi Gras. He's talking about some riot about to break out. Gurney was another leader. How many leaders could there be? This was turning into a ruling party committee. But Gurney was different from the other putative generals in that his following was geographically specific. It was called the Cockney Reds, the London branch of the Manchester United supporters. I highlighted this passage because even within the tribe of these English Manchester U fans, there was different sects of the tribe, like schisms. for whatever reason. That made me think of even in an empire spreading itself too thin, or any kind of philosophy or religion where people split themselves up into different denominations. It's not different in a football firm. I just thought that was pretty interesting. The intercity jibbers themselves were also divided between those who were not from London and those who were the Cockney Reds. Later in this story, he talks about the Rangers and, is it the Celtics? I guess that's how you call it, or is it the Celtics? I'm confused now about why is it the Boston Celtics, not the Boston Celtics. Can you say it either way? I just never Googled that. The second principle was the more important one. Everyone, including the police, is powerless against a large number of people who have decided not to obey any rules. Or put another way, with numbers, there are no laws. That made me think of the insurrection events of years ago when people raided, the Capitol building. There was some order restored, but if that was like 10,000 people, who the fuck knows what would have happened. So he's right when he says that. I think he's reading from another person who wrote a book about crowd violence. What causes a mob? How do you keep control of a mob? How do you keep a mob organized from within? And how do you handle it from the outside, trying to stop it? It's a science involved with that. Over the years, I think I understand that more. There was a lot of protest, and when Trump first ran, there was a lot of shit going down. All right, here's another line. See, everything I was reading, I was kind of comparing to things that are still fresh in my mind from the last decade of American politics. I can't really put myself in the shoes of a Manchester U supporter who's ready to just go fucking nuts against the police in another country or against another firm in England. Like, they're talking about stabbing people because you don't have enough time to beat them up because the cops are going to be on you. So you have to stab people to get the most damage done. Like, it's gang warfare to this really sick degree, man. A chant has started. United, united, united. The chant was clipped and sure. United, united, united. The word was repeated. United. And through the repetition, its meaning started changing, pertaining less to a sporting event or a football club, and sounding instead like a chant of unity, something political. It had become the chant of a mob. United, united. I've been at a number of Eagles games, even not working. I've been to a lot of Eagles games working, and I still get involved because I'm a big Eagles fan. I would still kind of get people to rise up on third down, get them loud. Like I was a fucking beer man, beer vendor, cheerleader, because I do love football. I don't really watch any other games though. I usually don't want to miss an Eagles game because it's 3 hours of just intense, really intense shit, and I love it. But I don't really like a lot of football because there's so many commercials now. And now in my 40s, I get more aggravated by it. So I have to do something else if I'm watching just a random Sunday night game. If it's not the Eagles playing, I'm not as interested. And I don't do fantasy football anymore or bet on sports. I just never got into that. The rest of the world is a big place, and its essential inhabitant is the stranger. The supporter did not like the stranger. The supporters did not like the stranger. The stranger, shopkeepers, employees of the London Underground or British Rail, old men in your way on the escalator, people asking for directions, someone trying to get your vote, bus conductors, waitresses, members of the Labour Party, people in the seat next to you, simply people in the way, was detestable. And there was no stranger more strange, and therefore no stranger more detestable than the foreigner. The foreigner was the one that they really hated. It was not admissible that they, being from England and now in Italy, might have been foreigners. The problem with foreigners was this: they were incomplete. For some reason, foreigners had never quite climbed all the way up the evolutionary ladder. There was a little less of the foreigner, especially foreigners of a dark complexion, not to mention foreigners of a dark complexion who were also trying to sell you something. They were the worst. So I guess that's the mindset of nationalism, where if I don't want to say all English people are like this or all English football fans are like this. This is 20, 30, 40, almost 40 years ago. So things change, man. Things change pretty quickly. I like some of the stuff. I did watch a lot of Liverpool games over the last few years. I became a Liverpool fan. I like Salah, and it was a good experience to just watch English football. I can't name a lot of people. I didn't follow it that much this year or the last few years, but I wanted to pick a Premier League team, and they have a lot of anti-racist stuff, and you can tell they're changing, or they have changed a lot of stuff. He's talking in this book about all the really obnoxious shit, like grunting at black players like a gorilla, or throwing bananas at people, like real fucked up stuff like that. It seems so juvenile, but put yourself in the shoes of that athlete, like Wayne Simmons of the Flyers. Really hardworking dude, great player. He was a fan favorite, and something happened at another location. He was playing hockey, and I think people threw bananas at him or some shit. It's just fucked up, man. And I guess they're really trying to change, because it's only 3 or 4 people could ruin it for everybody. That's usually what people say. Like, for example, during the NBA Finals, when some of the Knicks fans were beating up this one dude in a Spurs jersey, and I think it was Kenny Smith. He said that, like, yeah, it's just a couple idiots that give everyone else a bad name. But also in this book, there's like thousands of these people, of these English hooligans, if you want to call them that are kind of like an army, and they go all out, man. It's like a war to them. It really is. That's how he presented it in this book, so I'm going by his experiences. We look forward to Saturdays, he said, all week long. It's the most meaningful thing in our lives. It's a religion, really. That's how important it is to us. Saturday is our day of worship. And I've heard many people say that about Sundays with the Eagles and whoever your team is. I re-emerged from one lavatory visit to discover a lad who looked exactly like Keith Richards. The likeness was uncanny. What's more, it wasn't Keith Richards at just any time of life. It was Keith Richards during the worst time. The lad had the same long, leathery lined face, the druggy, offhand manner, the endless cigarettes, the dazed and exhausted appearance of sustained personal abuse. He, too, had been in Italy, but I didn't remember seeing him there. That, he said, was because through the whole match, he had sat at the bottom of the stairs with his head between his legs, vomiting upon his feet. He showed me his boots, still caked with the dried splatterings of the horrors that at one time had been contained in his stomach. He worked in a factory, making soap powder. The perfect profile of a hooligan, isn't it? He said. He works all week at a boring job and can't wait to get out on a Saturday afternoon. The violence, he said, we've all got it in us. It just needs a cause. It needs an acceptable way of coming out. And it doesn't matter what it is, but something. It's almost an excuse, but it's got to come out. Everyone's got it in them. Again, you could really, from a psychological perspective, why do people join any type of mob? People who otherwise, a lot of these people had real life jobs and families, but on Saturdays they were fucking, ready for war with another firm. Again, I don't want to talk too much because I don't have experience with this. I never was involved in any gang, tribal shit. Whenever there was a fight, I would usually just be like, oh fuck, I don't want to be a part of this. So yeah, I'm definitely not the. I am that character in Green Street Hooligans. It's not really based on this book, but maybe there was inspiration, I guess. Elijah Wood, right? Like he was kind of unready for that type of experience of violence, physical violence. Like Fight Club is very similar type of methodology and thesis statement. Our generation didn't have a great war, so we fuck up shit because we're in a fight club. It's the same mentality for these English hooligans, I guess. And it is stupid, but maybe that's in our DNA to want to be the alpha and prove our fucking dominance over other people. There's just ways to do it. And I don't know, he's saying this is acceptable, but I don't think it's acceptable anymore to just run amok through a city and fuck up shit like that. I wonder what things are like today at a World Cup match. Like, what if the USA played Iran or Iraq? Or what if Israel and some other country, Israel was in it and they played Iran? Would shit go crazy? Who else has a good rival? If Russia and Ukraine played at the World Cup, what would fucking happen with the fans there? Because he's talking about Catholics against Protestants, and they're kind of similar people. Catholics and Protestants, yeah, they've killed each other a lot as form of tribal warfare over whatever their differences is. Protestants and Catholics, Ireland, I guess, is the hot button place to look at. But I guess also England and other parts of the world, not just the UK, but he talks about going to a match in Scotland between the Rangers and Celtics, or Celtics, whatever you call it. Sorry. I'm a stupid American. I don't know how to pronounce that word as a sports team. So he goes there, and half the crowd is Catholic, half the crowd is Protestant, and there's a lot of fucking tension. And I guess the match, this is in the chapter where he talks about waiting for a goal, and it's really good. You wait for like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes, and you might not see a goal. If the match ends in a draw, it's like all your tension and aggression doesn't get released. That's how he puts it. It's funny, isn't it? Sammy could be put away for years if they even knew half of what he'd done. But if he did the same thing in a war, you'd see his picture in the papers. Let me say that again. It's funny, isn't it? Sammy could be put away for years if they knew even half of what he's done. But if he did the same things in a war, you see his picture in the papers. When is violence acceptable? In a war, there's still rules of warfare, I think. But yeah, you're not going to want to approach everyday relations by the Geneva Convention, going to a Dunkin' Donuts, or whatever your normal routine is. I don't think you have to check with the Geneva Convention to see if you're doing things properly. Just before the trolley pulled up, Sammy turned around and surveyed the supporters that he had brought with him. He did a head count, one by one, looking everyone straight in the face. I was included in the head count. Sammy shook his head and cursed, realizing he had made a mistake. And then he looked at me again, stared, and counted me in. I was pleased. What did I think I was doing? So he's remembering these events where he was becoming a part of this firm after realizing and witnessing the violence and the crazy depravity. He's an American journalist. I don't know how old he was during this, but maybe pretty young. And he was becoming one of them. And there's other parts of the story where he wanted to be a part of the violence. Sadly, he does get pretty fucked up at the end of this story. I think that was a World Cup where the police beat the shit out of him. My friend turned to me and said, "What is that curious sound?" I said nothing, but the grunt continued. Ugh, 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 ugh. What is it? He asked. It's because a black player has the ball, I said. They are making an ape sound because of a black player that has the ball. The looks that crossed my friend's face were so genuine and unmediated. Bewilderment, outrage, disgust, but mainly incomprehension. He couldn't understand it. The grunt continued. Ugh, 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 ugh. Both of us looked around. The grunt was coming not from a few lads, but it seemed from everyone on the terraces, old, young, fathers, whole families. Everywhere we looked, we saw the ugly faces of men grunting, sticking out their lower jaws in their crude imitations of apes. Why was it so much worse here, I thought? Or why was it so much worse here? I thought, appreciating suddenly the ironies of being in White City, having entered from South Africa Road, until finally the black player passed the ball on and the grunting stopped. And then another black player got the ball and the grunting resumed. My friend's face was still fixed in an expression of intense incomprehension. I couldn't explain it. I was embarrassed to be living in this country. It's England, I said. Again, I didn't copy this to say England is a racist country, but again, it only takes a group of people to do something like that, and it gives you a bad look. If you're a tourist and you're there and you're like, oh, fuck, man, what are they doing? Every time the black dude touches the ball, they're just grunting. Like, I don't know what I would do at that point. What can you do? You can't really do anything. But what if you're like a black person watching the game? You'd be like, ah, fuck, this again. I'm just trying to watch the fucking match, man. So I figured I would say that. I did tell that story. And he talks about the National Front because he actually went to do a story with the leadership of the National Front of one area. And some of the shit he noticed there. My new fuzzy friend Phil was disgusted by football violence, or at least he put up a good show of disgust. According to Phil, it was all of the government's making. The government had the power to stop the violence if it wanted to, Phil believed, but it hadn't because it was in its interest to keep the violence going. It was in its interest to turn working people against each other. It deflected working people from having to address the real problems of their lives. Just like I said about immigration's used as a scapegoat, and it got worse and worse here in America. All the racial, and I include identity politics. You can talk about the Trump stuff, talking shit about Mexican people, and some of the other shit he's done. Yeah, sure. But I include identity politics as a form of at least ignorance. I do believe that. I don't think identity politics is really any better in trying to bring people together as just a human being. It's all about labeling people, and I'm like, fuck, man, who the fuck are you to label anybody by race, creed, nationality, sexuality, gender, all these things now. And it's not a huge deal. If I got a job and they asked me what my pronouns were, I'd be like, I don't have pronouns, I'm sorry. My name is Ray, and I have a penis, I'm a man, and that's all I know for sure. And I don't know what the whole pronoun thing is. I don't think it's going to really last. I said that before a couple of times. If it reduces discrimination somehow, then I guess I'm for it, but I think it's kind of a ploy just to fuck with people. So it can come in different fashion. Fascism comes in many different shapes and sizes. I think that's a quote from somebody. More militant and more extreme, he assured me, than the National Front. The League of St. George was against all modern technology. It advocated a form of agrarian socialism. Modern man, he said, has been uprooted from the soil and placed in an artificial concrete world. That's what we're hearing today with artificial intelligence. I don't know what this League of St. George is. Some branch of the National Front or something completely different. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting. Modern man and technology, it's always been a conflict in terms of labor and labor politics. It's happening now with artificial intelligence. The more I look at Instagram, I'm still kind of addicted to it on a daily basis. I'm checking Instagram while I was reading this book like once an hour, just as a little escape, I guess. Now I get all animal videos, so those are really addicting. But that is a conflict. A lot of these commencement speeches are about artificial intelligence. One guy had a brilliant move. He read something off a script, like, you graduates today will go fighting into the world and with idealism and whatever, the usual cliche thing that people say as a commencement speaker. I don't know who this guy was. I can't look it up now, so apologies. I can't give him credit. It was at some art school. But then he said, and he held up the index card and ripped it up, and he said, what I just read to you was done by AI. That's why it sounded so bland, like you heard it 1,000 times before, because AI cannot feel, it cannot have these experiences. You can feed it. And I had this same exact thought in the world of art. You could teach a quantum computer the history of cinema, directorial techniques, and all this shit, and teach it different cinematic methods and the best movies ever, writing scripts and the best screenplays and all this shit. But it's never going to create something based on their own experience. Human beings have that advantage, and will always have that advantage, because we live, and a lot of our art is from our experiences. A computer can't do that. It could copy us and mimic it, or maybe even come up with because I'm not going to say it's not possible. A quantum computer might come up with a crazy science fiction story because it could think at a higher level of scientific discovery that we don't know yet. But I'm not going to go there. That's getting too deep into artificial intelligence. Something I felt was being communicated between everyone there. Just about every member of the crowd of 9,000 people was pressed closely against someone else and was held, as we were held, tightly together, waiting for a goal. This is when he's talking about that experience. Waiting for a goal is like a crazy chapter in this book. It's unlike any other sport, really. Maybe the Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, one of their episodes of Welcome to Wrexham, they might have been talking about how different it is to watch a soccer match, a football match. I got to catch myself because people might criticize me for saying soccer, but that's how I grew up, played soccer. This, I thought, is the way animals behave, but the thought was not a metaphoric one. This was genuinely the way animals behave, herd animals. Sheep behave this way, cattle, horses. And another part of this book, maybe another page over. In part, it is a matter of language when the actions of diverse individuals are similar and coherent enough that you must describe them as the actions of one body with a singular subject and a singular verb. They are, it is, the many people are, the crowd is. The English football game expects the spectator to become one with the crowd. In a good football game, a game with atmosphere, the spectator assumes it. It is one of the things he has paid for. But even here, it is more than an ordinary crowd experience. Again, that's like Orwell. You could say that's like an Orwellian of groupthink, of a whole crowd coming together, whether it's for a positive or negative type of a vibration. And then the game, having succeeded in apprehending me so, played with me as played with everyone else. It teased and manipulated and encouraged and frustrated. It had engendered this heightened feeling, and equally the expectation that it would be satisfied, that there would be gratification or not, that the team would score or be scored against, that there would be victory or defeat, climax or disappointment, release. But what happens when all the energy, but what happens when all of that energy concentrated so deep into the heart of the crowd is not let go? That's what he was talking about, the Rangers and Celtics game. I'm going to look that up after, if it's Celtics or Celtics, because I don't know how to say it. All right, farther along in this book, I just read the last 150 pages today, so these are more fresh in my head. I knew that this spectacle, the stadium full of sectarian intensity, 60,000 supporters, half in blue, half in green, was unlike any sporting event I had ever attended. With hindsight, I can see that I did not appreciate the weight, the gravitas of the occasion. Rangers and Celtic, Protestant and Catholic, the cup final, and Celtic losing 2-0. Which actually, I think it turned into a tie, if I remember this. All right, let's move on a little. But he's talking about the Scottish Cup final between pretty much the Protestants and the Catholics in Glasgow. Mounted constables arrived. He's talking about all the crazy shit that happened during one of these matches years ago. Mounted constables arrived, and in the melee that followed, more than 50 persons were injured. When the barricading was broken down, the rioters piled the debris, poured whiskey over it, and set the wood ablaze. The flames spread to the pay boxes, which were only 20 yards from a large tenement of dwellings. Great alarm prevailed, particularly when the firemen were attacked by the mob and prevented from extinguishing the fire. For no sooner had they run out the hose than the crowd jumped on it, and cutting it with knives and stones rendered the efforts of the firemen useless. This was not the game he went to. This is a newspaper report from some other event from years ago, I think. I just thought that was crazy. They're trying to burn down the fucking stadium. Like, there was that much animosity or feeling of violence for some reason. I think this was in April 1909. So you could see how it was passed down from every generation. Isn't that what tribalism really is? You grow up in this environment, in this tribe. We're Eagles fans in this house. We're Manchester U fans in this house. We're English. What does that mean? What does American mean? I'm an American. What does that mean? What are the essential elements of being an American? What does that mean? It could be a lot of things, I guess. It's not really your citizenship test, but that is a part of it. Do you believe in the Constitution as the singular, most weighty law of the land that must be upheld above all else? I think that's probably the ultimate. If you want to consider yourself an American, you have to swear to the Constitution that you won't affect somebody else's pursuit of happiness. I don't know if that's really available to a lot of people, whether during the Jim Crow era, slavery, Native Americans. What was the deal with them? You give them a bunch of casinos and everything's cool. Like, that's capitalism's answer. We took your land, but hey, you can make money with us. That's how capitalism deals with any kind of guilt, or it's not really guilt. It's just work with us in this capitalist fashion. We'll give you a fucking casino, man. And I guess maybe you could say that's selling out, but I'm not a Native American. My knowledge of Native American history is not that great. Maybe it's from Reservation Dogs. Still, that's one of my favorite shows ever. And maybe they go into that a little. The history of the Catholic Church trying to forcefully spread their religion and indoctrinate young children in these orphanages of Native Americans, trying to bring them up Catholic. It's a different time. I'm not going to say the Catholic Church is still like that today, but there's a lot of interesting angles that I never knew. Reservation Dogs was an eye-opening show that kind of approaches what I'm talking about, tribalism and how that's good and bad. The second point is the apparent cause. For the second Saturday in succession, the match between Rangers and Celtic cannot produce the result. For the second Saturday, the match had ended in a draw. The crowd could not endure another match ending without victory or defeat, without a release. I guess he's kind of connecting that to why violence breaks out sometimes, because you don't have that release. But I don't know, sometimes it is just a supremacy thing. Alpha males against alpha males. These are the things that are said about crowds. This is a really good section here. It's kind of long, but let me get through this. A crowd is mindless. A crowd is primitive. It is barbaric. It is childish. A crowd is fickle, capricious, unpredictable. A crowd is a dirty people without a name. Clarendon. These are the people who said these things. I don't know who this writer is. Clarendon. A crowd is a beast without a name. Tarde. A crowd is a wild animal. Alexander Hamilton. Hippolyte Taine, I don't know how to say these names, man. Scipio Sigele. A crowd is like a flock. All right, just know that everything I'm saying is coming from other authors on page 181 here. But I don't feel like pausing every time. So let me start again. A crowd is fickle, capricious, unpredictable. A crowd is a dirty people without a name. A crowd is a beast without a name. A crowd is a wild animal. A crowd is like a flock of sheep, like a pack of wolves, like a horse, tame when in the harness, dangerous when set free. A crowd is like a fire burning out of control, destroying everything in its way, including finally itself. I love that line. A crowd is in a fever, in delirium, in a state of hypnosis. A crowd reveals our Darwinian selves, primal hordes suddenly liberated by the sway of the pack. Beer muscles. A crowd reveals our Freudian selves, regressing to a state of elemental primitive urgency. A crowd killed Socrates. A crowd killed Jesus. A crowd kills in the Bastille, at the Commune, in front of the Winter Palace, in the streets of Vienna, down a dirt road, or in Mississippi, or Soweto. And again, a lot of these come from different authors, but I didn't feel like splitting it up. Thomas Carlyle, Plato, I said Alexander Hamilton, other people, Gustave Le Bon. I've never heard of any of these people. We find people who have abandoned intelligence, discrimination, judgment, and unable to think for themselves. Orwellian is what I think about. I'm speaking myself now. And because of the English, because Orwell was an Englishman, right? That's what I'm thinking of. It's just the groupthink. They're vulnerable to agitators, outside influences, infiltrators, communists, fascists, racists, nationalists, phalangists. I think that's a political party somewhere, and spies. We find people with a thirst for obedience, an appetite to serve. A crowd needs to be ruled. A crowd needs its patriarch, its despotic father, chief, tyrant, emperor, commander. It wants its Hitler, its Mussolini. A crowd is like a patient to a doctor, the hypnotized to the hypnotist. A crowd is a rabble, to be manipulated, controlled, roused. A crowd is not us. But eventually he finds out that the crowd could be anybody. The other quote said the same thing. Everyone's got that violence inside of them. All right, now he's talking about the 1990 thing. I think, yeah. The rioters filled Trafalgar Square and controlled the center of the Capitol for more than 3 hours. How many rioters were there? 3,000? 5? 10? England, my newspaper told me the next day, is a civilized country. How could this have happened? Was it not because ringleaders of dubious politics infiltrated and influenced the crowd? Well, what was the insurrection? There must have been somebody firing that first shot, breaking the first window to go inside the Capitol building, I guess. Was it not instigated by the riffraff of our society, the marginal elements? Isn't that what Hillary Clinton said? Like the deplorables. I think that was her line. The anarchists, the small-time revolutionaries, the anti-parliamentarian militants. That's a mouthful. The language of the prosecution when the arrested were brought before a magistrate could have been Burke's or Tynes or Le Bon's. The crowd, it seemed, is still not us. You don't want to feel like you're a part of that society. people did that after the January 6th shit. I remember Doc Rivers, maybe he was the coach of the Sixers still at that point, and he's saying if that was a group of black people, things would go fucking crazy. But I don't know. Yeah, it was all white people I want to say for the most part. I just think of that dude in the Viking helmet. But where do you get to the root cause of why people are doing this? You have to get to root causes. And I've heard a lot of people more intelligent than me say that. What is the root cause of the fascist elements of Trumpism that is not about compromise or negotiation, or from the left? Because there is a nationalism with communism as well. Communism claims to get rid of racism and bring people together, but they do it through a lot of the fascist playbook, very un-American methods of brainwashing people or forcing people to join that movement. It is a form of fascism if you force any type of philosophy on someone. You could discuss politics freely in America. A communist could have a conversation with a fascist, and that's been a thing in the past. It's not a new phenomenon. Political debates, because nobody really labels himself a fascist, right? It's usually hidden as something else. Maybe communists are proud to say they're communist or a socialist, but usually people don't say I'm a fascist because that's automatically going to say you're a Nazi, or I don't think people say they're openly fascist. I never met somebody like that. I've only met a handful of people who said they were communists. But again, there's different levels to all this shit. The groupthink in communism is just as powerful as any religion. Not that I know firsthand, but I'm sure it is, because it's a scary type of environment. Groupthink can happen anywhere. Fascism does not have to mean that you're a Hitler fan or Mussolini fan, or I don't know, a dude from Spain when they had their civil war. Because people could say Reagan was a fascist, Thatcher was a fascist. I don't know where that quote comes from, that fascism comes in many shapes and sizes. I should probably look that up. My place in a civilized society, my place as a citizen, derives from an arrangement of agreements and routines. My day is heavily patterned. I wake, pee, eat, shit, shower, dress, travel to work, write my letters, make my phone calls, pay my bills, attend to my diary, drink coffee, pee, talk, lunch, run errands, catch my train, arrive home, have dinner, drink, pee, am entertained, fuck, pee, clean, teeth, sleep. I have a house, a shelter. I leave it in the morning and return to it in the evening. It is there, a material fact, not simply reassuring, but reinforcing in its familiarity. I have trouble with that word, familiarity. The daily routine. I highlighted this passage because it's funny, and it kind of inspired me subconsciously. I'll share something I wrote in my book that is similar to that. The daily routine, or your life routine, trying to make a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan, 2 kids, mortgage, whatever. What are these experiences? There are so few. They are so intolerable. Religious ecstasy, sexual excess, insistent, unforgiving, pain, inflicting it, having it inflicted, pain so great that it is impossible to experience anything except pain. Pain as an absolute of feeling, arson, certain drugs, criminal violence, being in a crowd, and greater still, being in a crowd in an act of violence. Nothing is what you find there. Nothingness is what you find there. Nothingness in its beauty, its simplicity, its nihilistic purity. I use that quote in one of my chapters. Let me read that again. And greater still, being in a crowd in an act of violence. Nothingness is what you find there. nothingness in its beauty, its simplicity, its nihilistic purity. I just like the poetry. Like, the reason this is my favorite book is the way the poetry of this violence. Because somebody could have wrote this book preaching to people. This guy was honest, very honest. That's probably why the English footballers like this guy, Bill Buford, because he wasn't trying to play people. He's being as honest as I think he could have been about what he experienced, the feelings that he was having, where he wanted to bash people in, because that shit could become addicting. Violence like that could be pleasurable. It was a point of Fight Club. It's almost like a part of well, people say toxic masculinity, but it could be a female thing too. I don't think you want to mess with those Real Housewives. They're pretty fucking intimidating. All right. I actually made a joke about that in my book too. See, I'm just giving shit away, man. But I love this book. I really do. I think he wrote a perfect book here. It's very easy to get through. I'm just highlighting certain parts that really connected to my theme of tribalism. Continuing now, the human mind is never at rest in the present. It is always roving, recalling, remembering, selecting, adding, forgetting. Sitting in the room as I write, my mind is Sitting in this room as I write, my mind is accommodating so many different activities at once. It encompasses this sentence as I write it. It has already completed the next one. It has completed this book, and it has at the same time not completed it. It has never completed it. It accommodates the state of the kitchen, the sounds of the birds outside, the quality of the light, the items that I must address later in the day, tonight, this weekend, next month, when I am old. Just how the brain works. As I'm reading these lines, I'm thinking of what I'm going to be talking about next. And I am attracted to the moment when consciousness ceases. This is why I read that last passage, because this is his thesis statement. I am attracted to the moment when consciousness ceases, the moments of survival, of animal intensity, of violence, when there is no multiplicity, no potential for different levels of thought. There is only one, the present in its absoluteness. When you have near-death experiences, or a doctor just tells you you got a couple months to live, or I don't know, you just got mugged and somebody bashed your head in with a gun, you're not thinking about all the other bullshit that you might have been thinking about leading up to a trauma like that. All right, I'm almost done through this. Hopefully this is somewhat interesting to some people. Again, I read this whole book over the last 2 days because I wanted to talk about tribalism, and I connect this book to that, to nationalism, which is a form of tribalism. Maybe they're interchangeable. Implicit in my thinking was the liberal commonplace that those who turn against society, I felt that destroying its property and inflicting injury on its members could be described as turning against society, have been denied access to it. I think that's what the media portrayed the insurrection like. These are people, malcontents, that don't think they have a say in government or whatever. They thought they were being like the Tea Party people. I don't know. I don't know anybody really that would have been attracted to doing something like that. And I'm sure people didn't know that was going to happen. Maybe they were agitators that were just anarchists. Whoever showed up for that thing, they probably didn't all know each other. And maybe they thought it was just going to be a good protest, and then shit got crazy. And when the shit hits the fan, people react differently. Sadly, yeah, it leads to innocent people getting mixed up in things. Grimsby, as I came to think of him, entered my life through a mix of fear and boredom. Fear because for the first time, journalists were being treated with a great deal of aggression. I saw a photographer badly hurt when supporters beat his nose with his own camera, and I felt safer in company. Grimsby declared, Grimsby decided I was acceptable because I was writing a book. I was not therefore a journalist. Nothing in his view could be more contemptible. I was an author. Grimsby's mother was a school teacher, and such distinctions were important. And that was how I would be introduced throughout the rest of the evening, an author, not a journalist. He always added the important qualifier. Again, that you could see how that notion of journalism, with how that was a part of the election. Both of the Trump elections, everything was talking about media manipulation and shit like that. I don't watch the news. I think a lot of the news is fake and corrupt and corporate branded to feed people this propaganda. Not all of it, but a lot of it. But that's not really a right-wing thing. That could be right or left, depending on the information source you're getting it from. I tried to listen to another podcast this morning about how did 24-hour news change the American political landscape, and I think that's pretty obvious. There wasn't really anything new, but it was cool to hear other people talk about it. And actually, the one guy was really praising Ted Turner. He was like a really crazy philanthropist, full-on rapist. Sorry, I watched that Always Sunny episode. I'm a full-on rapist. It's almost like that Arrested Development. I forget what that was. I forget that Tobias Funke. I forget what his term was. All right, what was I talking about? Yeah, Ted Turner, he actually gave like $1 billion to the United Nations to fight misogyny and women, and to promote women's rights and fight diseases. So I don't know about Ted Turner. He seemed like a really righteous dude trying to make a difference like that. I think his idea for CNN was not what it is today. The animal it is today about ratings and sensationalism, where movies like Network from the 70s, before CNN was even created, and Nighthawks with Jake Gyllenhaal, that shows the sensationalism of media culture. And maybe that's worse because of social media, where anyone can be that guy. I forget his name. Is it Lou Bloom? Jake Gyllenhaal in Nighthawks is one of the best performances. I forget his name in that, but it's a great performance showing that anyone could do that. It's a weird type of citizen journalism today. And I watched a lot of it in the past. There was a guy on YouTube that would just drive through Los Angeles in his car looking for interesting things to show on his channel, live stream. He would go give blankets to homeless people. Seemed like a cool guy. He would feed cats, but then he would he would have the police scanner on, just like the Nighthawks, or is that what it's called? Yeah, I think so. The Jake Gyllenhaal movie where he plays a reporter trying to start his own underground type of thing. Rene Russo. So it's interesting how the media can shape people's attitudes to that point to get violent against a journalist. It's another branch of government. It really is the fifth estate of government. I think that's what it's called, or the fourth estate. Yeah, the fourth estate. He was in a peculiar nationalist stupor, no longer noticing me, or I suspect much of anything else. And so I slipped off and set out for my hotel. The sound of England echoed off the buildings. I imagine returning in the morning and finding Grimsby still there, his voice grown hoarse, croaking noiselessly. As I walked on, his chant grew quieter until it disappeared behind the shouting of other England supporters in other parts of the city. I included that just to show. Yeah, he was telling this story about this guy he met, England supporter, and I think he saved him from getting arrested because he was doing a bunch of shit, threatening people or breaking something, I don't know. And he got so drunk, he just passed out at the train station because he didn't even have a place to stay. And when he was leaving, he just kept shouting, England, England. Like that. people make fun of Eagles fans. Eagles fans will go to like see a Phillies game in San Diego because Philly fans travel really well. So you'll be watching a Phillies game when they're playing in San Diego against the Padres, and you'll hear E-A-G-L-E. That's what that reminded me of. Like, you'll hear an Eagles chant at a Flyers game, Sixers game, especially when they were off the Super Bowl win and people were really still in that heavenly attitude. We finally won a Super Bowl. All right, let's continue here. I only have a couple more paragraphs that I highlighted. With the blow, the policeman must have lost consciousness, if only because he seemed to offer so little resistance to what Harry did next. He grabbed the policeman by his ears, lifted his head up to his own face, and sucked on one of the policeman's eyes, lifting it out of the socket until he felt it pop behind his teeth. Then he bit it off. Wow. I had to share this. I'm sorry if that's disturbing to people. It's disturbing to me as well, but what a fucking story, dude. Holy shit. Tarantino, like, I'm stealing that. I'm gonna put that in a movie. Some drunk dude bites off a police officer's eyeball. Yeah, I'm using that in something. That's the craziest story I've like ever heard in my life. All right, moving on. Sorry if that was disturbing. Either the violence of today is symptomatic of the rot of our times, our urban blight, the loss of our faith, the disintegration of our families, the want of discipline in our homes, or the violence of today is fundamentally no different from what it was yesterday. There is always violence in one form or another. True, but I think the problem is the weapons become more deadly. The ability to fuck up a whole city, well, I guess that was around in the 90s too. It was still the Cold War. The Soviet Union didn't even disband yet, right? Until 91. I believe in the modern behavioral models of our conduct, and much of this book has set out to prove their validity, that the crowd is in all of us. It isn't an instinct or a need. Being in a crowd isn't necessary to our being complete human beings. But for most of us, the crowd holds out certain essential attractions. It is like an appetite, something in which dark satisfactions can be found. Yeah, when you put it like that, it is like Fight Club. It really reminded me of Fight Club a lot. Because what was Fight Club all about? About that. A lot of people said it was about right-wing nationalism. I guess people term it toxic masculine. But it was about people without a purpose, people feeling helpless, feeling sick. There were a bunch of Walter Whites that wanted to break bad. Instead of cooking crystal meth and dealing with gangsters, they just fought each other. And I get that. You want to control that part of your DNA. Maybe it's more of a masculine thing. I don't know. Could you have made Fight Club with an all-woman cast? Would it have made sense from a psychologic? I don't know. It's a really good question that just popped in my head. Would people complain that it's toxic femininity? These women have to get their aggression out. I don't know. Could you make that movie? Or is that the divide between certain worldviews? I don't know. I really don't know. But it's an interesting way to look at it. If Fight Club was made with, I don't know, some famous actress instead of Brad Pitt and Ed Norton, maybe Julia Roberts, she just beat the shit out of herself, or Demi Moore, or a younger actress like Florence Pugh, maybe she could pull it off. Scarlett Johansson. A female Fight Club would be an interesting thing to portray. There's some UFC fighters I would never want to fuck with, like the female kickboxers. They would totally kick the shit out of me. So there is an element to that. Females can be more war hawkish than men. There is such a raw, terrible power in the crowd. Fascists and revolutionaries understand its power. The National Front knows its potential and how rare it is to see that potential realized, and how difficult it is how difficult it is ever to control it. Another, yeah, just the politics of a crowd is very interesting. The psychology of being in a group ready to fuck shit up. The man with the rough hands has disappeared along with the heavy industry that required them. All right, this is more of like a take on the working class of England. I don't know who, Orwell had this vision of what would happen if socialism took over, what would happen to the English family. He mentioned it in this book too. So he does go into some Orwellian type of thought from his time, and it's not that much different, one generation removed or whatever. So he's kind of going, what is the image now? The man with the rough hands, the working class, has disappeared along with the heavy industry that required them, the mine workers and steel workers and automobile workers who have retired or been made redundant or anticipate redundancy in the future are not being replaced by their sons. They will not be found in a factory. They, like the majority of the employed population, are working in what we've learned to call the service sector. That's in the conversation right now. Like that was kind of what Trump was running on with the coal miners, bringing back clean coal. And you could see how these same arguments politically are still there, and it's 2020 in that election. They were talking about stuff like this. They're still talking about it with redundancies and artificial intelligence taking the job of truck drivers soon or one day. A lot of fear mongering on both sides. They, like the majority of the, okay, I said that. If still engaged in a labor that requires their hands, they are self-employed, working as painters and decorators, plumbers, or electricians. They might be couriers or drivers of delivery vans, Amazon workers. But most will be found in offices and businesses being run by bankers, accountants, stockbrokers, insurance salesmen, and computer programmers, or the private enterprise equivalent of the civil service, the giant corporations of British Telecom or British Gas. I thought that was interesting because, like I said, it still plays a part in politics today. That's those same arguments of the working class being forgotten, the Midwest, the Rust Belt, they call flyover country. You always hear those types of things when election time comes, and a lot of places do feel forgotten. Parts of Pennsylvania, it's not that different. People have these conversations. But the problem I have is when people aren't honest about the symptoms or why these things are happening. Not that I know, but I know it's not immigration. I know it's not these types of fear mongering, the radical right and radical left trying to gain power by fucking it up for everybody else. People just want to live in a society where they don't have to be afraid that they can make an honest living. And that's why I have a problem with America today. I don't see it getting better. I'm not going to vote. I really don't see myself voting. I didn't vote the last time. I didn't vote for Hillary or Trump. I didn't vote for Trump or Kamala and Biden. I didn't vote in that. I voted for legalized marijuana. And that was the only thing. I think I voted for Cory Booker to be in New Jersey. But that's all I really did. I don't like to vote anymore. I think it's pointless because I see it as a illusion of choice, like the George Carlin cynical side of me. I don't believe in the radical right or the radical left that they're doing anything to bring people together. So I will not vote Democrat or Republican. I don't see it as a foundation to bring people together to some normalcy. I just don't see it like that. Maybe I just don't pay attention to politics, so I shouldn't even mention these things, but I don't like the conversation. I don't like the way people demonize each other, call each other Nazis, call each other fascist or fucking whatever, commie bastards, the Antifa angle. Like, I don't like any of this shit. I just want to live a normal existence as a human being, and I don't feel like I have to join some radical group in order to achieve that. I'm trying to get a job right now because I haven't had a job in a while, and it's not been easy. Am I blaming something? I'm blaming something for blocking me because I feel like I am being blocked, but I don't know what it really is. I don't care if it's some political shit. It shouldn't be a hindrance to somebody who just wants an honest job. And that's why I'm more angry about my situation in New Jersey right now. I'm trying to get the fuck out, experience different people, different culture, and maybe New Mexico is my best bet. Maybe I should just take a bus there tomorrow or at some point. It's going to come to that. Again, how can I not get a job? I have more than enough experience, and it's been extremely aggravating. Another reason I read this book was to try to maybe figure out why I'm struggling in life right now. Feel like I am disenfranchised. What, do I need to have a political party affiliation to get a job? Is that how it works? To go to a certain grocery store, I need to have a certain political affiliation. Is that how it works in America? Like, if it is, you have to be transparent about it. When you go to Aldi, Walmart, Target, or any of these places that has to say, we only serve Democrats, we only serve Catholics, we only serve veterans, we only serve this and that. Like, well, then do that. If you want to politically adjust your philosophy as a corporation like that, then you have to be transparent. You can't just expect people to know what the fuck is up or force your shit on other people. So I get aggravated at shit like that. I don't know if other countries have gone through this stuff for a long time, but if that happens in America, then it's bad for everybody, man. I go back to David Foster Wallace. I didn't read Infinite Jest. I'm honest about it. I only got through like 100 pages. Infinite Jest was a very difficult book. Maybe I could do it now if I give it a shot, but it's very intimidating. But he talks about the corporatization of America, where in the future there will be no states. Everything will just be based on Microsoft or Google or whatever he used, Apple. And these states will just be run by the corporations. It's kind of like how the government is run now anyway, but maybe you could even look at sporting events. Every stadium is named after a bank. Lincoln Financial Field, Citizens Bank Park, instead of Veterans Stadium. And I get why people do that. I really don't give a shit. If it helps the team and helps the city and helps the owners buy better things for their players, I don't give a shit. It's really not a big deal, but it's an example of what David Foster Wallace was talking about. Everything has to have a corporate sponsor. And when shit hits the fan, these corporations have the luxury of just changing their brand name. Like, it used to be the Wells Fargo Center, the FU Center, First Union, Wachovia, other shit. I'm probably forgetting other ones too. All right, back to the book. But it is only a style, nothing substantive here. There is nothing to belong to, although it is still possible, I suppose, to belong to a phrase, the working class. A piece of language that serves to reinforce certain social customs and a way of talking, and that obscures the fact that the only thing hiding behind it is a highly mannered suburban society stripped of culture and sophistication and living only for its affectations, a bloated code of maleness, an exaggerated, embarrassing patriotism, a violent nationalism, an array of bankrupt, antisocial habits. This bored, empty, decadent generation consists of nothing more than what it appears to be. It is a lad culture without mystery, so deadened that it uses violence to wake itself up It pricks itself so that it has a feeling, burns its flesh so that it has a smell. That's a great line. This generation is so, what do they call it? The nothing generation, the blank generation of the past. It's a term that can be used today. It pricks itself so that it has feeling, burns its flesh so that it has smell. That's a great line, man. And it plays, he wrote this probably in the 90s, and it's exactly the same experience that a lot of people are going through. The suburbanization of communities, kind of like gentrification. You could go there. Sunbathing, Robert wrote. Good food and great sex is so much better than being a thug. It was signed one of the boys of the old brigade. He was reminiscing with an old hooligan that he met years later who now was out of that game or whatever. And he's saying how stupid the whole thing was. It's an outlet because you don't have the realization that other things in life, the simple things, are more important. Good food and great sex. Would you rather have that, or would you rather go see a football match every Saturday or Sunday in America and get into fights with people and get violent like you're in a gang? I'd rather have the good food and great sex, or just have the ability to make my music in my desert home. That's my vision of, not that I'm going out getting into fights with people. My vision of my utopia is exactly that. Living in a desert, off-grid place where I can make my music without bothering people. And eventually collaborating with a bunch of famous musicians later in life. That's realistic. I, too, sallied out into the blistery cold night, visiting the appropriate pubs, filling myself with lager, afraid that I might otherwise miss an incident that would reveal new things about violence and nationalism and the Dutch character. In the end, there was trouble, but it was between the English supporters who, having read the papers, had come out to meet the violent Dutchmen and, failing to find any, fought among themselves. So again, it's like everything they're saying for England, if there's not an outside foreign menace, because that's how it's termed a lot of times. That's the Trumpers, right? The outside foreign menace that's trying to take over our democracy, whatever the fuck they want to term it. And I'm not saying illegal immigration is right here. If right wingers are like, this guy's just a bleeding heart liberal, man, open borders. Yeah, illegal immigration is a different thing, but demonizing somebody because they're an immigrant, demonizing somebody because they don't look like the original founders of this country, and they get demonized because wherever they come from and they don't speak in the same manner. That's what I'm talking about. That's the ignorance that I think Trumpism led to in a lot of ways, and it's still going on. I'm not for illegal immigration. There's got to be ways to do it, and every country has laws like that, so you got to be smart with it. But I don't think the right response is to demonize people. I feel like that gotten worse and worse. Maybe people just get frustrated because nobody knows the answer to these questions. And you can see how similar it is to these football hooligans that go looking for a fight. They look for a bunch of Dutch people because England was playing Holland or whatever in that World Cup in the 1990, I think. Or when they played against Juventus. And he asked one of the people, do you even know where you are? And the guy said, I'm in Juventus right now. It was English, Manchester United playing Juventus and wherever that is in Italy. And the one English supporter that was there didn't even know where he was. Like, that's funny, but it's like, it's like me, I'm going to go see Eagles game in Tampa Bay, Florida. And they're like, where are you right now? I'm in Buccaneers. I'm in, like, I don't know what Juventus even is. I know it's the name of the club. I don't think that's the name of the city they play in, but maybe I'm wrong. Is Juventus a city? I feel like I have to look that up because I feel dumb now. Is Juventus a city? I think there was a really horrific thing that happened in that stadium where people died. It's not a city, no. It's just a professional Italian club in Turin, Torino. So even I got confused with that. But this English supporter just went there to fight. Like he's like, all my brethren, my English blood brethren are going to this Italian place because Manchester United is playing against Juventus, so I must be in Juventus right now. I'm not trying to call the guy stupid, but he didn't care where he was. That the appeal of violence was probably what was motivating this individual. I don't think it mattered if they were playing an American team or if they were playing Turkey or Australia or even Scotland. I don't think it would have mattered. He just wants to support his team through violence, which is crazy to me. Like, and yeah, if people read this book, they would think twice about making fun of Eagles fans for being these horrible fans, rabid. It's really not a part of it. Maybe you could look at Veteran Stadium as more of a scary place to go, but I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. What's that movie? Silver Linings Playbook, Bradley Cooper, De Niro, based on a true story. I wanted to read that book. I did buy that book, but I didn't get a chance to read it yet. Silver Linings Playbook had kind of a similar conversation about Eagles fans and how much of a religion it is. And yeah, growing up, I didn't really like it until later in life. I was too young to know the Randall years, like as a rabid fan. But the Donovan years was when I was old enough to go to bars and really pay attention to the draft, listen to sports talk radio. All those things make you a part of that tribe. And I still consider myself a part of that tribe of every Philadelphia team. I don't listen to every single Phillies game, but I do get addicted to at least watching the highlights. It's 162 games. Maybe I could get more, as I'm starting to exercise more now, I could listen to more games. Obvious metaphors apply. Again, going back to the book, these are not my words now. Obvious metaphors apply. The members of the crowd were both the crowd and its creators. They were clay and potter, stone and sculptor, voice and music. They had made something out of themselves. So the members of the crowd were both the crowd and its creators. It's kind of weird to think of it like that. But I think also there are people that become leaders and stuff like that. If they're the most drunk, the agitators, or people that will go to a Super Bowl parade. I don't know if anything happened in New York. Did they have their parade yet for the Knicks? But there's always groups of people that use events like that to just, preach their brand of anarchy, steal shit, or just break shit for no reason. It's inside of everybody, but some people don't really control it so well. Some people need to let go of their violence in violent ways. Some people do it through primal scream therapy or seeing a therapist. They can manage their rage levels or working out or doing what I'm doing right now. I do consider this a therapy session for all the bullshit going on in my life. I need to do stuff like this every once in a while. But I'm also going to start working out more. I'm doing stuff like that to get some aggression out until I can move to the West Coast. It was such a simple but enormous thought. These fools, despised at home, ridiculed in the press, incapable of being contained by any act of impulsive legislation that the government had devised, wanted in England to defend. They didn't want Europe. They didn't understand Europe and didn't want to. They wanted a war. They wanted a nation to belong to and fight for, even if the fight was this absurd piece of street theater with the local Italian police. So he's relating to the exact same theme of Fight Club, where there is a line in that movie about our generation didn't have a great war. A lot of people will point back to that, like their great grandpops or grandpops were in World War II, the greatest generation. I guess some people would have family still in Vietnam War. Your opinions on the Vietnam War could be very different than World War II, though. It gets very complicated at that point. But is there some urge inside people, man and woman, to let out some kind of a tribal? Because people don't want to be a lone wolf. They want the security of a tribe. And a lot of times you have to prove your worth to a tribe or your job, your whatever organization, your church, your marriage to another family, bringing two families together. Like there's a lot of shit like that. I'm a lone wolf, but I don't know how far that's going to get me in life. I'm a lone wolf. I'm not looking to get married, really. I don't know what's in my future, but I look at it from an artistic point of view where I can make the most art on my own without any other bullshit, without an outside influence. Whatever muses want to affect my path, like they've been doing for the last 20 years, maybe more so the last 5 years. It's just going to be up to me to legislate. Nobody else will have really any kind of a relevant opinion over my art, really. That's kind of what I'm looking for as a DIY creator like that. But I don't know where it's going to come. I'm not trying to make radical stuff anyway. I just want to make stuff freely. And I feel like America that should be more than possible. It should be encouraged to do that. The real violence was in England when, after the national team lost, lads across the country spilled out of the pubs, angry and full of feeling, the crude feeling of their miserable nationalism. I like that line. The crude feeling of their miserable nationalism. And here we go again. It is a type of Groundhog Day. I can see if people, and that's the end here. Hopefully you got something from this. I can see if people in a gang and you're fighting other gangs, it's still not good. Get out of a violent life as fast as you can. Find the good food and great sex and a more peaceful life. I don't understand gang violence, but I didn't grow up in the inner city where maybe opportunities are lacking. Well, definitely. And people turn to black market opportunities. So I don't know what gangs are like. Initiation and all that shit. It seems pretty crazy to me. But I don't know. Everyone's going to have a different experience, so I can't speak to it. I'm not going to try to judge other people. I'm not even going to judge these hooligans that do shit like that. But if it happened to me or happened to somebody I knew, I probably would be more. That's like the whole Brady bill. As soon as it happens to your family, then you start pushing for legislation and shit like that. The PMRC, their kids are listening to these Ozzy Osbourne satanic heavy metal bands. We have to legislate shit now because it's happening in the suburbs to our kids. There's a special kind of hypocrisy with politicians that they'll be so quick to demonize the immigrant, demonize the drug addict until it happens to their family. Their kid becomes a drug addict, and then they see the reality of it, and maybe they change their view that these really aren't just criminal people. They're people without opportunity, people without a purpose. They feel disenfranchised. Could have happened to me 5 years ago when I got fired. I got fired for no reason. They offered me 20 grand to keep my mouth shut or whatever. They read me this riot act of bullshit, and they offered me $20,000 when I left. And then I was like, I didn't say anything, but of course I didn't take that money. I didn't take that money because it was like a hush money. So they would have like this power over me that what they did to me was legitimate. It was buying my silence, buying my reputation and name, and they thought they could buy me for $20,000. Like more than ridiculous. If there was a reason to fire me, they wouldn't have offered me this money, but they knew they fucked up. That's why I'm still angry today. After that, I was like, fuck that. I'm working for myself from now on. I'm going to build my own business because I'm not going to deal with bullshit people like that again. But it didn't turn out that way. So now I need to find a different way to make a living without dealing with all that bullshit. If people have advice for that, yeah, my ears are wide open. I'm trying to go to the West Coast though. I don't want to go anywhere else. Southwest or California seem like great opportunities for me to spread my artistic wings and find a different community of people. All right, I'm almost at 2 hours, so I have to kind of shift gears now. And I'm going to go into the music. And maybe I should split this up into 2 parts. I don't know yet. Because I feel like I'm going to rush this if I do it now. So I'm going to do that. I'll come back in like an hour or two, and I'm going to go through this actual album. So this will be a 2-part talk. When I come back in a couple hours, I'll go through the 8 songs, and I'll talk about Horace Tapscott, why he was a very vital influence over this type of a spirit. Why I'm afraid of drums. Percussion is kind of intimidating to me. Where these lyrics came from, and I'll get through all that stuff in the next talk. This talk was really just about part 1. What is tribalism? Why is tribalism contagious and a part of everyone's culture? Everyone's culture has had these tribal feuds with somebody else. My family's from Sicily. They've been taken over by the Moors. They were taken over by the Vikings and whatever the fuck else. You go to Sicily, it's amazing. You'll see all these different types of architecture from people that conquered the island back then, like way back in time. I'm not that intelligent about architecture or religious symbolism, but there is Middle Eastern flavor. There's well, of course, you're going to find tons of Catholic churches, but you'll find other types of, even there'll be Greek ruins because there was a Greek influence. If you go to Agrigento, it's pretty interesting. So wherever your family comes from, there's some point where they had some tribal feud. Somebody invaded them. They invaded somebody. They were taken as slaves. Somebody else took them as slaves. Some kind of genocide might be in your history. This is why tribalism exists, because human beings don't know, we haven't gotten to a point yet where we can just call each other human beings and be happy with that. We're still paying for the sins of our father. It might not be the father. We're paying for the sins of our great, 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 great grandfather because they did some shit in their day. All we can do is look at our own individual lives and be like, what am I going to do in my life that people 500 years from now will be like, what a fucking dick? That's what I look at it as. I'm trying to live my life in a free, independent spirit away from this left and right bullshit, especially when it's thrown in people's faces through these manipulative manners where people are exposed as these fraudulent people. That's how you have to look at it. In 100 years, if I have kids and they have kids and they have kids, they're going to look back at this generation. I'm 44, so whatever I am is that Generation X or whatever the hell it is. Those people were so fucked up back then because I'm sure people could look back in your genealogy. Maybe your great-great-great-grandfather had slaves. Maybe your great-great-great-grandfather was involved in, I don't know, some war that was really kind of fucked up, kind of genocide. Whatever. You could still see a good part of your family heritage. They're not all bad people because people aren't like that. There's good and bad in all people. These soccer hooligans, these football hooligans that Bill Buford was living with and hanging out with, I'm sure they had families, a lot of them. They had normal lives they tried to live, but they had different viewpoints on nationalism and what it meant to be British or whatever. Like, English people will probably hate on me for talking about this because I don't know anything about it. If I lived on an island and it was a different history like that, maybe I would have a different opinion on things too. I don't know, man. I'm always against that because I don't want conflicts in my life. If I join a church, I join any kind of brand, it's almost like you're inheriting the history, whatever rivalries exist. If I become a Muslim, then I might have some rivalries that I didn't have before, and I have to learn what these conflicts really came to. If I became Jewish, the same thing. If I became a communist, it would be similar type of experiences where other people would hate me for being a communist because something happened in their family in Eastern Europe or whatever the fuck. There's so many different rivalries like that based on this tribal mentality, and it's empty. You have to just focus on the simple things, good food and great sex, and watching sports without wanting to kill people or shout racial bullshit at people. I don't think it's like that anymore. I think kids today are way on the other side. They're so scared to say anything to offend people, and even if that's annoying, it's still better than the opposite. Uh, it's still better than throwing bananas at people and doing really fucked up shit. These are grown people doing stuff like that. Back in whatever Bill Buford was doing this in the late 80s, 90s. Yeah, if I was a part of a team and I was a part of the Flyers fan base and I saw somebody doing that, would I have the guts to speak out against it? I don't know. I'm not a confrontational person, but it, again, if I had the majority of Flyer fans are not like that, I feel like they would all gang up on those people and be like, get the fuck out of here. You're representing the orange and the black. This is our tribe. This Flyer symbol built by Ed Snyder, Bobby Clark, and shit, I forget his name. The fucking goalie, really cool guy. I can't think of his name. Sorry. Yeah, I think he lives in southern Jersey. I'm gonna have to look it up because I feel bad. Very popular guy in Philly. The Flyers goalie when they won their first 2 cups, their only cups in the early 70s. Famous Flyers goalies because there haven't been too many. Hextall was pretty awesome. I wasn't around in the late 70s, sorry. But, oh, Bernie Parent. Yeah, all right. I did think of it before I Googled it. Bernie Parent, I think he lives still in southern Jersey because he's treated like a god. Yeah, they won back-to-back Stanley Cups in the 70s, so. Yeah, if you were at a Flyers game and somebody was saying something really bad, racial bullshit, I feel like 99% of Flyer fans would be like, fuck that guy, fuck that woman, get him out of here. It's almost like it. I don't know how to handle stuff like this because now my brain's going to Trump rallies where if there's an opposing voice in a Trump rally, that's what he would say, get him out of here. I found a lot of good comedians on Instagram that do really good Trump impersonations. It is pretty funny. Get him out of here. I can't really do one. So I don't know how to react to stuff like that. You're representing a tribe, though. That's the point of tribalism. If there's 40,000 or maybe 20,000 Flyer fans and they're totally great people, no racism inside of them, and then there's 2 people in the stadium in the arena shouting racial slurs at people. What do? How do you? Because then everyone's going to look bad because of these 2 assholes. It's a tough thing. It becomes like that ACLU argument where if the KKK wants to march through a town, you have to protect their constitutional rights. But it's not really a right to scream hateful stuff in a stadium. That's kind of the point of that screaming fire in a movie theater, where those people are probably screaming that shit to start trouble as an agitator for whatever reason. So you could just ignore them, but if they're talking the whole game, it could be difficult, I guess. De-escalation, escalation. People are taught these things when you go to a job. How do you de-escalate an unruly fan and whatever? A lot of different philosophies on these things. I'll go back to the book one last time, and then I'll take a break here. When he went to Italy the first time, the English fans just fucked shit up. They pretty much took over the police. There were just too many to handle. They broke property and just like Vikings raiding a fucking town. There was just crazy destruction and violence. So when England played again in the World Cup in Torino, I believe that's where it was. Maybe I'm misremembering this, whatever. Maybe it was Sardinia. And the cops were ready that time because they knew what to expect. And they were kind of trapping the English fans. They were kind of pretending like they were backing off, but they were really leading the English supporters into a trap where the military was waiting. That's when Bill Buford got his ass kicked, because even though he was just a journalist, he had become one of the English hooligans, whether he knew it or not. I think that's what he was saying in the book, subtly, in a more subtle fashion, that he was having the oh shit moment when the cops were coming for him. He's like, wow, these cops, they're not going to get me. I'm a journalist. I'm an American. But he had evolved into, or transformed into, a hooligan, a part of the Manchester United English flavor, because he spent so much time with them. I don't think he became a hateful person. And I'm not saying all these people are hateful people. That's where I'm saying it's a difficult conversation for me to have, because I've never been in a gang. I've been on sports teams, but I've never been in fights with people. There were a couple moments playing soccer where, it would get pretty aggressive and you wanted to fight people, but I never had that experience. I'm not a fighter. I try to stay away from it, but even when I was in my 20s going to bars and stuff, I just wanted to get drunk and have fun. That is inside of me, even though I sound hostile and angry, because my life is kind of in a neutral position right now. So I can understand how somebody in a more vulnerable spot and they feel as trapped as I do right now, whether they're on the right or left, whether they're considered a fascist or a communist or whatever the hell you want to talk about. I feel like even terms like that kind of ruin the plot, because people will just take sides at that point. You have to look at these as individual people who make individual decisions to do an act of violence or to do drugs because they feel like they don't have an outlet, they don't have any path to a successful, happy life. That's why I don't vote, because I don't feel like either side of the aisle gives a shit about those, the outcast. And a lot of people feel like outcasts in an environment like this today, politically at least. You feel like you don't want to join a side because there's so much bullshit on either side. Meet the new boss the same as the old boss. I don't know what the future has in 2 years when there's another presidential election. I hope it's better in terms of the conversation. I really do, because I think most people are sick and tired of the bullshit, whether it's the right or left. And I don't have the answers for it. There's people who might have a path to bring people together without any kind of bullshit, just a way to offer people a more, a more harmonious vision for an American future for their children and their children's children. How do you get to that point where it's not just left versus right anymore? It has to change with just the conversation people have. And that is not helped when you have these demonizing a group of people or the threats of violence against other people. It becomes a unwelcome political establishment that nobody wants to be a part of. Or maybe you do. Maybe you like the insurrection and you're all about that shit, and you can empathize with these football hooligans or the National Front people that think it's their duty to keep England English, because that's kind of like what the uh, America First thing was in a way. I'm not saying Trump's a racist. I'm not saying he isn't a racist. It's more complicated than that. Um, the people behind the scenes, the people part of his base that might not be as open-minded as other people. I'll put it like that. But are these people Nazis? Are they fascist? Yeah, you have to be careful with the language, because a lot of Trump people were just like in this story, Among the Thugs. It's a perfect title, Among the Thugs, because nobody is all thug. Everyone, you could be the toughest motherfucker in your gang, but guess what? There's going to be somebody tougher than you. So if you base your life on just being able to intimidate people, you're going to lose eventually, right? You could be the toughest motherfucker, whatever. There's people in the UFC, whoever was the toughest ultimate fighter of all time. I don't know. Joe Rogan talks about people. I don't know these people by name because I don't watch it. Mike Tyson probably was the most intimidating young heavyweight ever. But I don't watch boxing much either. There's always going to be somebody tougher. So if you build your life philosophy on violence, intimidation, the threats of intimidation, if that's how you have to win your argument, you're going to fail, because somebody's like you in another country and they're playing the same strongman tactics. So it's just strong man versus strong man. And I say strong man, but it could be women too. That type of a spirit is not going to rule the day, because you see how humanity has changed, and the only way it changes is to give people a different perspective on things. It's why I'm trying to move, so I can get a different perspective. It's why a lot of people fall down more hazardous traps, because they feel like they have no purpose. It's a shitty feeling, man, and yeah, it sucks. I'm still working to build my business, and that's keeping me sane. If I didn't have this, I didn't have the ability to get my thoughts out, or to, right now I don't have the opportunity to just leave and go somewhere new. I don't have that opportunity. And that's the saddest thing. For me, I just can't get over that. It's really just a fucked up thing, but I'm going to stop it here, and I'll continue in a couple hours and talk about the music of this album.